Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the RNGL show. This is going to be a good show. This is actually going to be the first video that I'm going to be uploading of a 7-part series. So I'm very excited for that. I've actually been wanting to start uploading content onto YouTube for a very long time now. So I'm finally pulling the trigger. I'm finally sitting down to record this video to get this content up and loaded. And a little disclaimer, I'm sorry if the sound is not as good as it should be. My main mic is not working well right now for some very odd reason. So I'm using this little lapel mic, which is here on my shirt. So yeah, I apologize if the sound is not as good as it should be. I'm gonna be getting this sorted out soon enough for future videos, hopefully. Getting this fixed. I don't know what's wrong with it. But for now, we gotta work with what we got. And what we got is this little lapel mic. So with that little disclaimer out of the way, we can now get onto why I am deciding to create a YouTube channel. So the reason I'm interested in wanting to upload content onto YouTube is because I'm very interested in a lot of different things. And what better other way to talk about those things with other people that may be interested in the same things that I'm interested in. So that is the goal. The goal is to create a community of like-minded people, of people who are interested in the same things that I'm interested in. So we can discuss ideas, we can share ideas, and we can talk about different ideas in a fun, free manner. So in this channel, we're going to be talking about from everything from nature, which, as you can tell from the title of this video, this is exactly the video that we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to be talking about everything from nature, psychology, philosophy, history, ancient lost civilizations, self-development, the origins of religion, the origins of ourselves. I'm interested in a lot of different things, and I have a lot of different questions, and I have a lot of different ideas for content and for topics and for discussions that we can have on this channel. So with that little intro out of the way, I guess we can now get started with today's topic, which is the top 7 killing machines of the animal kingdom. And the reason I came up with this title or this video in the first place is because I was very interested in an animal that we're going to be talking about in just a little. I was sitting right here on my couch and I was reading about this animal, and I was just so impressed at how lethal and effective this animal is when it comes to killing. So I started wondering, this is definitely an apex predator in its own respective domain. But what about the other domains? What about the other apex predators? So I came up with this video. And for starters, if you don't know what an apex predator is, pretty much the word apex comes from the Latin word apex, which originally it meant a small rod, a metal rod, at the top of a flaming scab. It was a small rod. Apex was a small rod that was placed at the top of a cap that was used by flamens in ancient Egypt. And if you don't know what a flamen is, a flamen was a priest, an ancient priest that would dedicate themselves to just worshiping one deity. Because the Romans had a lot of different gods, which we're going to be talking about, by the way. We're going to be talking about those gods. Who are those gods? Where they come from? Because every ancient culture talks about a pantheon of gods. Everyone from the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Hindus, the Aztecs, the Mayas, the Incas, everyone talks about gods. Even the Sumerians themselves, which the Sumerians are the first known civilization known to us. They go back to around 6,000, 7,000 years ago, and they were advanced from the jump. I mean, from the Sumerians, we get the wheel. They invented the wheel. They invented the plow, which is used for agriculture. They invented our modern day calendar. From them we get our modern day calendar, and also our 24-hour days and 60-minute hours and 60-second minutes. We get that from them. They also knew the position of the planets on the solar system without any modern technology and no telescopes. They also knew the precession of the equinox, which is a wobble of the earth that it takes 1 degree to change every 72 years, give or take. But tell me what ancient dude is going to be sitting there watching the precession of the equinox change every 72 years? And if so, why? Why would they be interested in that? And they attribute all of those findings or inventions not to some genius on their society, but to their gods, which are called the Anunnaki, which translated means the people from the stars, or the ones to descend from the stars, which is a very interesting notion because every ancient culture talks about gods or meetings with gods who came down onto earth and they gave humans forbidden knowledge. I mean, even the Bible itself, the Bible talks about in Genesis chapter 6, it talks about the Belaiha Elohim, which are the sons of God who saw a woman, which they were fair. So they came down onto earth and they bore them abomination. They bore abomination to human women. And those abominations are called the men of renown, the legends of old, which the Native Americans, they called them the mound builders or the master builders. They were tall beings with red hair, double rows of teeth. Every culture talks about giants, gods, and a flood. It's a very interesting notion. So those are the Nephilim. Those are the Nephilim offspring, the hybrid gods or the demigods of the fallen angels, the gods, and the mortals, which is us humans, whether that be angels, fallen angels, demons, or aliens, whatever you want to call them. There's always a meeting with humans meeting a supernatural entity or supernatural entities all over history. The Book of Enoch, which a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about, but the Book of Enoch talks about the Watchers, which is a group of angels, 200 to be exact, which had been given the task of watching over humanity. And they fell in love with human women. So they came down onto earth and they took human women as wives. And one of them, Azazel, his name was Azazel, he gave humans forbidden knowledge. And the angels, the fallen ones, gave humans forbidden knowledge that was forbidden for them. They taught humans metallurgy. Azazel taught humans how to do weapons so they could kill each other. They also taught humans about horoscopes and the constellations, which was forbidden knowledge. They also taught humans witchcraft and magic. They taught humans how to do makeup, human woman, and arts and crafts. So there's a lot of different texts that talk about gods giving humans forbidden knowledge, or gods walking down, roaming the earth. So we're going to be talking about that specific topic in future videos because it is a very interesting notion. But right now, we're not talking about gods and fallen angels and aliens, so we're going to be leaving that topic for future videos. Right now, we're talking about nature. So, yeah, the word apex comes from the Latin word apex, which originally it meant a small rod at the top of a flaming scap. We already know what a flaming is. So the way the word apex, as we use it right now, the way the word apex made its way through English or to English was through none other than Ben Jonson himself, which is regarded by many as the second most important English dramatist of all time. He's second to none other than William Shakespeare himself. So a very intelligent guy. He started using the word apex to describe a flaming scap or something at the top of a flaming scap. So people from his time and 4 centuries later, as we use it right now, people started using the word apex to describe something at the top or a summit. So as we can tell now, an apex predator is a predator that is at the top of its food chain or at the top of its domain with very few or if any other natural predators. So now that we know what an apex predator is, and I'm sorry for that long little explanation, I hope you are not kind of lost right now, but now that we know what the meaning of an apex predator is, we can now get started with our top 7 killing machines of the animal kingdom. So I came up with 7 different domains, and those domains are: number 1, salt waters, which is, and the one that we're going to be discussing today, the oceans. Number 2, fresh water, which is rivers, ponds, swamps, and other freshwater areas. And then we're moving on to the land animals, which is forest, the jungle, the savanna, the desert, and the Arctic. So, first domain, the oceans. So to start off, we're going to be talking about the oceans and who is the top killing machine of the oceans. When it comes to the oceans, the animal that many fear the most and many would imagine to be the top killing machine of the ocean is the great white shark. And I mean rightfully so. The great white shark is a literal monster. It grows to be around 11 to 13 feet, but they can grow as big as 20 feet on the bigger cases. But they're on average, like I said, 11 to 13 feet, and they can weigh between 4,000 to 5,000 pounds. So definitely a tank of an animal. They have 3 rows of teeth, which when they open their mouth, they look absolutely terrifying. And each one of their teeth can grow as big as 6.5 inches. Those teeth are made to rip chunks of flesh apart. They're just designed for cutting through. Sharks can swim at speeds of 35 miles per hour in short bursts, so you're definitely not outswimming this beast. The great white shark is a literal monster, definitely a top killing machine in its own regard. But it pales in comparison to the actual top killing machine of the oceans. So who's the top killing machine of the oceans? Who's the top apex one that roams the ocean? Who's the actual most fearsome beast of the ocean? Well, the orca, aka also known as the killer whale, is the actual top killing machine of the ocean. I mean, the orca is known in Latin as Orcinus orca, which translates to belonging to Orcas. Orcas was a Roman god of the underworld and the champion of death. So orcas were given this nickname because of their hunting prowess, because ancient sailors would see them hunting down with such intelligence, hunting down animals and prey with such intelligence and very meticulously. So they dubbed it the Orcinus orca, belonging to Orcas. So we can already see the reputation of this animal that this animal has. And you know, SeaWorld has given us a very skewed perception of this animal because they're actual killers. I mean, actual killers. Orcas can grow to be as big as 30 feet, but on average, they grow to be around 20 to 25 feet on average, and they can weigh between 6,600 pounds and 8,800 pounds. They can also swim at speeds of 35 miles per hour, which they can maintain for long periods of time, and they have teeth like those of a shark. Orcas are the best hunters of the ocean. They hunt everything from fish, sea lions, seals, humpback whales. In fact, killer whales have been even seen preying on sharks themselves.
Ingrid Visser and Kenneth Scalay are looking for evidence that orca are hunting great white sharks in New Zealand waters. Ingrid has evidence that there's a disturbing pattern in orca hunting.
Orcas are known for chasing down sharks, and once they get to them, they'll ram themselves against the sides of the shark, stunning it. And then they would do a maneuver which scientists call vortexing. So a group of orcas, they hunt in packs, so a group of orcas will start swimming around the shark, creating a literal vortex, which then the shark is already stunned, which then the shark just starts spinning around uncontrollably. And then one of the orcas will get their body out of the water and then slap them with the back of their tail on the back of their head, stunning it even further. And from there, another orca is going to turn the shark around. It's already stunned. It's spinning around uncontrollably. So from there, they turn her around, which puts the shark in what scientists call tonic immobility, which paralyzes the shark. And from there, they start drowning, and they're pretty much an easy meal for the orcas. Then what they do, they remove the liver with surgical precision, and they leave the rest of the body there.
But I've seen it a few times now. You see the orca and they're very, very precise in how they do it. I've got footage of orca with the 7 gills where they've ripped the pectoral fin right under the pectoral girdle there, and they've extracted the liver. The way the orca hunt the 7 gills is pretty impressive. First of all, they'll come in and they'll karate chop the sharks, so they'll just come and lift their tail up and whack them on the back. Then they grab the sharks by the pectoral fin and rip them open and pull the livers out.
Ingrid captured rare footage of orcas hunting 7 gills in northern New Zealand.
And sometimes they don't even kill. Sometimes they don't even eat the shark. They just kill it for fun. So as you can see, sharks are nothing in comparison to the orcas. In fact, sharks are so terrified of orcas that whenever a group of orcas is passing by their hunting area, the hunting area of the shark, orcas are just passing by, and the sharks will flee that area, don't come back for a whole year. That's how terrified sharks are of orcas. Even though the orcas may just be passing by, the sharks won't come back. They won't come back to that area because they're so terrified of the orcas. So as you can see, the nickname killer whale is very appropriate for this black and white beast. But actually, the nickname killer whale came from ancient sailors who would see this animal hunting down bigger whales and even sharks with just pure intelligence and very meticulously. So ancient sailors gave it the nickname Asesina Ballenas, which translates to whale killer. But over time, it flipped and flopped, and now we call them killer whales, which has created a big misconception because killer whales are not whales at all. In fact, they're actually giant black and white dolphins. They are the largest members of the dolphin family. So they behave pretty much like dolphins. They live together, they hunt down together, and they live in families called pods. So pods can be up to 50 different individuals, 50 different orcas, and they are very, very close with one another. So much so that they have developed their own different language and form of communicating with other members of the pod. The baby killer whales don't ever leave the pod, so they stay on that particular pod until they die. So in any given pod, we can find a group of 3 to 4 generations in the same pod. So a great grandma, a grandma, a mother, and then the baby killer whale. The oldest female orca is in charge, telling the pod where and when to feed, so it's a matriarchy. And orcas since young are taught to hunting tactics, social interactions, knowledge of feeding and breeding grounds, and also migration routes. The older members of the pod teach the young ones these essential life skills, and one day those young ones will grow up and they will teach the same life skills that they've learned from the older members of the pod to their own children. So this knowledge creates a very particular culture, which is called orca culture, which has been handed down from generation to generation. And some form of different orca culture is that a pod would develop certain hunting tactics. Oftentimes, a pod will specialize in eating just one type of animal. For instance, as we explained in just a little while ago, they will specialize in hunting down sharks, or they will specialize in hunting down seals. Some of them have perfected the art of beaching themselves, hunting down seals. And the way they do this is that they know seals are pretty clumsy on land. On water, they're very swift, but on land, they're pretty clumsy. So what they would do is they will chase the seals out into the shore of the beach. And then once they're close to the shore of the beach, they will beach themselves, creating a wave so the seals can get lifted up and thrown around, thrown back forward. From there, they're trying to get away on the land, which the orcas know they're not going to get away. They know that they're pretty clumsy on the land. So from there, they just snatch them up. They get their bodies parallel to the water. They wait for the incoming wave to come. which the incoming wave will give them some airspace between them and the ground, and from there they will wiggle themselves back to the water.
Sea lions are notoriously clumsy on land and during the transition from swimming to walking in shallow and turbulent water. So by the time they notice death itself approaching, it's usually too late to get away. Once grounded, the whale arches its body with its head and tail lifted and rocks sideways. This motion orients it parallel to the beach, and a subsequent wave helps to lift it off the bottom. The whale can then swim back into deeper water, carrying the prey in its mouth, where it will eat it or share it with its pod.
This takes them years to perfect. It takes them years to perfect. Oftentimes, the female orcas, it's always the female orcas that are teaching the young ones this essential hunting tactic. And they have been seen beaching themselves over and over and over again without yet hunting. And they have even been seen using props like seaweed to make the training more realistic.
Young orcas can be seen with older adults practicing again and again, beaching themselves repeatedly, but not yet trying to catch any prey. Sometimes the older orca introduces a prop, like seaweed, to enrich the training. It's always females who teach the young orcas, and they do so with remarkable care and patience.
This is a very dangerous tactic because they can end up beaching themselves, getting stuck, and never being able to get back to the water, which means death. So it's a very particular group of elite orcas who actually end up mastering this tremendous skill. Some of them never get over the fear of getting their bodies out of the water. So they would just stick to the ocean. They would help the elite ones who can actually beach themselves. They would chase down the seals close enough, and then they will stay back because they know that they're very, very afraid of the shores.
This intentional beaching technique is a tricky maneuver. It's not easy for the orcas to synchronize their movements with the waves coming in and then back out. And if they miscalculate, they risk getting actually stuck, which can prove to be deadly. There are 30 orcas that live along this stretch of coastline, but only 13 orcas have mastered the stranding technique. To get to this level of mastery, they have gone through years of rigorous teaching and training.
And for other examples, other group of orcas would just stick to eating salmon and Chinook salmon. They have perfected their way of chasing down salmon, and they just stick to eating salmon pretty much all year round, or for the bigger part of the summer, for the most part of the summer. So this shapes the way they communicate and they hunt, and they have to communicate in a different way with different tactics. So this shapes their own culture. So we can see how traditions, customs, and even preferred foods are passed down and practiced by different pods of orcas. They hunt very meticulously and intelligently. They pass down their own customs through generations, but by far, the most impressive thing about them is their complex way of communicating. Orcas communicate with their nasal passages, which they use bursts of air to create certain whistles and certain frequencies, which allows them to communicate. Orca language is learned and inherited, and in fact, just like human babies, baby orcas in the womb of their mothers can hear their families talking and communicating with one another, their family's language. So they're learning their language even before they're even born, in the womb, which is crazy to me. Orcas, once they grow up, they learn the language fully, which allows them to communicate with one another, to mate, to bond with other family members of the pod. This allows them to socialize and create bonds with other family members of the pod, which will last for a lifetime. Orcas are so good at learning different languages and imitating sounds that a famous known orca known as Wiki has been seen in captivity imitating human sounds like hello, bye-bye, and 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
In fact, scientists believe that full-on communication with orcas, dolphins, and other whales soon may be possible. Dr. Thorne Startner has developed a device called CHAT, which stands for Cetacean, Hearing, and Telemetry, which is a very, very clever name in my opinion. The CHAT device receives sounds and emits sounds through a speaker. It is a very particular device which researchers take underwater, which then receives signs via hydrophones and then emits sounds via a speaker. Past studies have shown that dolphins can easily mimic whistles, and they can also learn to associate certain whistles and certain sounds to certain things, like food. They know that fish are food, so they have a certain whistle for that. So researchers are banking on their ability to teach dolphins and orcas certain whistles that stand for certain things, so they can learn to imitate them, and eventually perhaps talk to them. For example, a researcher was underwater with the CHAT device when it received a very particular sound. It received a sound that stood for, or that the CHAT device translated to stand for, sargassum. So the dolphins were emitting a frequency or a whistle that stood for sargassum. And sargassum is a type of seaweed which dolphins use to play with. It's a type of toy that they use. So this was a breakthrough for the researchers on this field, because they all of a sudden they knew that their CHAT device kind of worked. Now, does that mean that the dolphins were actually trying to communicate with the researchers, telling them that they wanted to play with sargassum? It is hard to say. But maybe the dolphin did emit such a frequency or such a whistle to try to communicate with them, or maybe the CHAT device just picked up something similar to that whistle, which it translated to be sargassum. The hope is that researchers, with the help of the CHAT device, can teach dolphins to imitate and learn certain whistles and certain sounds, and teach them to learn to associate those certain whistles to certain things, so they can kind of communicate with them. So I really like this method of trying to communicate with the cetaceans and orcas and other whales, because it's amazing, just the mere fact that we're even talking about it, of the possibility of interspecies communication. So I'm going to be looking at this development and what comes from this field in the future, and I'm going to be looking very, very close at it. And I like this method, like I said, but I still like John C. Lilly's methods better. And actually, John C. Lilly is the reason we're even talking about the possibility of talking with dolphins and orcas. He's the pioneer. He's the one that actually started this field of trying to communicate with dolphins. He's a pioneer of all of this. And although his methods were very unconventional, and many people said he was a mad scientist, he was a lunatic, he was a crazy person, and a madman, I think the opposite. I think the guy is an absolute genius and an absolute revolutionary thinker. So let's share some of his work, and let's see who John C. Lilly is, so we can get a better idea of what this guy was doing. So John C. Lilly is a neuroscientist, a psychoanalyst, a physician, a philosopher, and an inventor. So early in the 50s and the late 40s, he was trying to communicate with dolphins. He's the actual pioneer, and he's the actual person why all of this even started. So in the early 50s, John C. Lilly came up with a very particular question. He said, being a neuroscientist and a psychoanalyst, he came up with a very particular question. He asked, does the brain need any external stimulation to remain conscious? So like right now, me, I'm right here sitting on my couch. I can feel it on my butt, right? I can see the lights. I can hear myself talking. And you guys are watching this video. You can see this video on your device. You can feel your device, whether that be on your computer or your phone, wherever you're watching it. You see lights. Your brain is receiving stimulation. So you're conscious. So the question was, if you remove all of that, if you take all of that away, will the brain go unconscious? So he set out to answer this question. So in 1954, John C. Lilly invented the world's first isolation tank, or sensory deprivation tank, which pretty much is a pitch black, light-proof, soundproof environment, which was filled with 10 inches of water, which was warmed or it was heated at the same temperature of the skin. So in there you could see nothing, feel nothing, and hear nothing, to remove all of the external stimuli. And it was also filled with Epsom salt, which created a very particular gravity of 1.25 to 1.26. So this environment allowed the person that was inside the isolation tank to float effortlessly. So it was heated at the same time, at the same temperature of the skin. It was soundproof, so you could hear nothing. It was lightproof, so you could see nothing, and you could feel nothing inside. That was the goal. The goal was to eliminate any sensory stimulation. Any sensory stimuli was completely gone. And after experimenting with his sensory deprivation tank, he discovered that no, the brain does not go unconscious whenever you remove all of the stimuli that your brain receives. It wouldn't go unconscious. But what happened is that he started tripping balls. His brain and your brain starts tripping balls whenever you remove all of that stimuli. So he started having all sorts of psychedelic experiences, adds all sorts of hallucinations, of trippy visuals. So lo and behold, people started using this, the isolation tank, for alternative healing and for having psychedelic experiences. So people would get in there and they would have trippy visuals, they would have hallucinations, they would get psychedelic experiences. And actually, in the show Stranger Things, L11, the girl that is a psychic, she uses a isolation tank, which, you know, when they throw salt on the pool and then she gets blindfolded and then everyone is quiet so she can, you know, be quiet, and then she can float on the salt and then she can use her powers better. That comes from John C. Lilly. That comes from this guy. So lo and behold, he started experimenting long amounts of time, for a very long time, hours on end, floating on his isolation tank, having all sorts of trippy visuals, oftentimes next to a very confused dolphin. What he was trying to do, he was trying to communicate with the dolphin telepathically and with his mind. So he would throw the dolphin inside the isolation tank and then jump alongside with it and try to communicate with it with his mind, telepathically. And as you can kind of tell, not much came from that sort of study. So lo and behold, the 60s came around and it brought with them a boom in consciousness exploration using psychedelic drugs. And we know that era as the hippie era. And knowing our lunatic scientist, we know that he was not about to be left behind by this consciousness exploration. So he came across a very particular drug called lysergic acid diethylamide, aka also known as LSD or acid. So he started using acid, dosing himself up with acid, and then jumping inside his isolation tank and having double whammies in there. When he probably thought, I could really try this with my dolphins. And try he did. He started dosing his dolphins up with LSD, throwing them inside the isolation tank, and then dosing himself up with LSD, jumping inside the isolation tank, trying to communicate with the dolphins telepathically and with his mind. I mean, talk about a freaking genius. I mean, this guy is an absolute genius. Where do I sign up to do that? I want to talk to dolphins. Just imagine if that was actually possible. If you could telepathically communicate with the dolphin inside the isolation tank. I mean, I would name him Gary and I'll be like, hey Gary, tell me the truth. Have you seen any mermaids? Have you seen any mermaids down there, Gary? Just imagine how crazy that would be. You could, Gary, let's make him join the party. Let's throw him in here, the mermaid. We can ask him if he has either, if he or she, whatever they are, they can, if they have seen Atlantis. Just imagine that. How crazy would that be? I mean, he was trying that. He was trying that. So as we can tell, he's a very out there guy. He's very out there. He was trying a lot of wacky stuff, trying to communicate with dolphins. And actually, NASA was funding this guy. NASA was funding this guy until he got one of his trainers, female trainers, to sexually satisfy a dolphin's needs. So maybe this guy is weird. Maybe he is a lunatic. Now, I mean, looking at it, he's probably a lunatic. And after this huge controversy, the guy, his research, he dried up. No one wanted to work with him anymore. His reputation was pretty much gone. It was through the drain. And he spent the rest of his days high on LSD, inside his isolation tank, trying to communicate with dolphins. And oftentimes when people will ask, hey, where's John C. Lilly at? Where's Lilly at? His beloved ones, his friends, the people that knew him, they would be, do you mean in what dimension is he at? Because you see, he started having all sorts of crazy, I don't know if call them experiences, or I don't know what this guy was into, but he was saying that he was in contact with the Galactic Federation, which was a group of aliens that were warning him and giving him predictions, and he was talking about them, he was talking to them, and that they were telling him that the technology was going to destroy the world, that technology was going to take over our lives. And this was in the 70s, by the way, mind you. Late 60s, 70s. So he was warning people to stop using technology because technology was about to take over our lives. And I mean, fast forward to 2022, it doesn't sound so crazy no more. And he had a lot of different predictions, which you guys let me know. We can talk about those predictions in future videos if you all want. If that's something that interests you, we can keep talking about our lunatic scientist. So yeah, he started using psychedelic drugs, trying to communicate with dolphins, and because of him, Dr. Thorne Startner right now is developing a device which is called Chat, which now we can kind of communicate with the dolphins, not having to use psychedelic drugs, which I'm very, very thankful for that. So yeah, I mean, that is the story of John C. Lilly. He was a very lunatic, eccentric guy, and maybe he was a little crazy. He was cray-cray, he was out there. But interesting person nonetheless. And because of his research, we now get the isolation tank, which is still used till this day, by the way. I think there's a very famous place in California which is called the House of Gravity or something like that, and people go there and they use the isolation tank. And I think there's one in San Antonio, in Austin. So there's, in different places, there's people that go and use it for alternative healing. And I want to try one day. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, I don't know. Maybe with the dolphin inside, I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I'm very thankful that we got people like Startner that is actually using technology to, you know, communicate with cetaceans, and he's not drugging them, he's not abusing them in any way. So I'm very, very thankful for that. So yeah, that is the story of John C. Lilly, and I'm very, very excited, like I said, to see what developments come from this field. But in the meanwhile, we still got dolphins and orcas. We put them on tanks and we make them do tricks. And with that note, we are done with our first domain, with our first top killing machine. So I'm very, very grateful if you stayed all the way to the end, because it's a long video. It's probably, I'm in the 30-minute mark right now. So I'm very, very grateful if you stayed all the way to the end. I'm very grateful for every single one of you that is watching this. So yeah, if you like what we're doing here, if you like the topics that we're talking about, please join me. Subscribe if you wanna. Turn on the little bell notifications if you wanna. Like the video if you wanna. Go comment down below if you want to. Yeah, with that being said, we are done with today's video. Please stay tuned for the rest of the video series that are gonna be coming out later down this week. So yeah, Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.